Everything, everything gonna be all right this morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of It's Me Speaking to You. I am, as always, your host, your ever faithful host, Mr. Jeffrey Wilson, coming to you live and direct from the gateway to the west, nestled oh so comfortably, the city of St. Louis. And pardon me if I sound a little off. I have a little bit of a cold, but we're still going to soldier through because we have a special guest tonight, and I'm just so happy to be speaking with her this evening. Her husband was one of the major contributors to the business we know as professional wrestling. His name was Mr. Frank Goodish, otherwise known as to the world as Bruiser Brody. We will discuss his prolific career, how he got to know this fella. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, and thank you for your time, Mrs. Barbara Goodish. How are you?
Well, thank you. I am doing fine, and thank you very much for allowing me to do this. It's a privilege, and I am so happy that people still remember him even after so long. It's been 27 years, and the outpouring of love still after all this time is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I see people with tattoos all over, basically the picture of him with his hand out, all over someone's back. Yeah, he's definitely made an indelible mark. And he's a very fascinating character, and I'm sure there are quite many layers. I wouldn't mind knowing, if you don't mind, just for folks, kind of refreshing, because our audience is kind of wide. Maybe not everybody knows exactly who this gentleman was. We're talking about a gentleman by the name of Frank Goodish, and she was married to him. How did you get to know this man?
Well, I was working in Australia at the time, and this was his first tour. He was working for Texas, which was Frisch Von Erich and the Von Erichs, and they sent him over to Australia. He was doing a tour in Australia, and I happened to meet him. I just happened to be working in a hotel at the time.
What year would this be, if you don't mind? What year would this be?
This would be 1977. Just seems like yesterday, 1977. So it's quite some time away, or long ago.
Sure.
And I just so happened to be working the front desk. They were short of people, and I'd gone down there to help out. And I was checking him in, and I sort of met him as soon as he arrived. Of course, there was nothing, because these were the days. You have to remember, this was the day before computers, before cell phones, before the technology that we have today. So the hotel that I happened to be working in had all the overseas wrestlers and that used to stay there when they came over to do their tour of Australia. So to me, they were all like my big brothers, because they would show me photographs of their children. I would give them letters from their wives. If there was a phone call, I'd find them and tell them their wife was calling.
How familiar were you with wrestling in general at that time? Prior to
Not
that?
at all.
Okay.
Never. Didn't even know. I only knew of it because of working and having. But to me, I mean, there was like Andre the Giant, and there were the midgets, and to me, they're all just people. To me, people are people. It doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter anything. We're all the same, sort of. We're all the same.
Of course.
So it wasn't anything different. It was quite fascinating because, learning about, talking about where they come from, and it was like, in those days, talking to someone from another country was like a travel. It taught you about traveling, because there wasn't much on TV back in those days. It was very new, especially over in that part of the world.
And where was Frank originally from?
He was originally from Detroit. Well, he was born in Pennsylvania, in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. But then his family, he was born from a coal miner's family, and his father didn't want him growing up in the coal mines. So he moved his family when him and his sister, there were four in the family, but there was only two at that time. He moved them to Detroit to give them, a better chance of life. And then there was two other sisters born after. So there was four in the family. There was an older sister, then Frank, and two younger sisters. So when I met, I'd been dealing, helping them. Like I said, they were like my big brothers.
Right.
They were all my big brothers and that. So there was nothing like that. And they became my friends because I didn't want anything from them. Of course, there were the women that were hanging around and everything, as we understand, and no matter if anybody's in the public eye,
Sure.
there's always that,
Kind of part of the territory a little bit.
that part of the territory. So this one night, in fact, the gentleman I worked for, he was from Big Springs, Texas. He was he was an American gentleman, a Texas gentleman, and he had another bar that was up the road. He had like the Bourbon and Beef, very Texas. It was called the Texas Tavern and the Bourbon and Beef. So this night, we never socialized in that. Sometimes somebody hadn't turned up that one night. This was after about, probably 6 weeks or something after I'd first met him, because, just talking and them touring and that. So this night, I had to work to cover for somebody, so I was working till 11 o'clock. It was a Friday night when they all came back, from their matches.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, well, we're all going up to the Bourbon and Beef. Why don't you come? There was I think 6, 7. There was a whole bunch. Just come up with us. So I said, oh, well, okay, I'll do. I'll come up with you and sit down, have a drink. I mean, I didn't think anything of it.
Sure.
Well, it just so happened that as the night progressed, well, it wasn't that late, but as it happened, one by one, everybody got up to leave. And it was like, okay, we're just going to get something, we'll be back, but they never came back. And this happened, and all of a sudden there was just 3 of us, which was Frank, myself, and it was another wrestler called Killer Carl Krupp, who has also passed away now. And then Carl got up, he left, which just left the 2 of us together, and that's kind of how it started. So we just sat there and talked for, the rest of the time there, and I found out later it was a setup. He had been trying to get me by myself, and it was a setup.
A rib, as they say in the business.
Yes, it was. I was set up, but the way that it worked out, it was good. And I think sometimes in relationships, when you are friends first, it's different because you're not trying to impress the other person.
Sure.
You're just being yourself.
Yeah. It's a much more solid foundation, obviously, than any kind of... I'm sure, saw so many people trying to put on fronts, etc. But, yeah, when you're just being yourself, it's a whole different ballgame.
And knowing, just talking in that, in the hotel and everything, just, when I was working in that. And, so it was me. So there was no games, there was no anything. It was just me. And that's kind of how it all started. And he was over in Australia for quite some time. So what happened was when he got ready, because everybody was saying, oh, don't waste your time. They're only here for a short time. They're going to go away, and you'll never hear from them again. So what happened was one night he came back from the wrestling matches. This was quite some time after, because I think he was over there for 7, 8 months. He'd gone home for Christmas but had come back. And he said, well, I'm going home on, I think it was, this was a Friday night. He said, well, I'm going home on Sunday. I went, oh, okay. Because he was a little bit of a renegade, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that knows him, he was a renegade. He stood up for himself, and, he gave his fans the best that he could. And I said, well, okay. And he said, he put a bundle of money down on the table, and he said, I if you'd like, I want you to come. I went, not a word. There was no promises. There was nothing. It was just, and at that moment, I knew he trusted me, because if he didn't trust me, I could just keep the money
Sure.
and not come. So I knew he trusted me. So I tied up I think he left on the Sunday, and I went over a week later. I tied up a week of my life in that time. And came over. I figured out, well, I had a return ticket, and I thought, well, if it doesn't work out, I'd seen America. There was an opportunity.
Nice vacation.
Sometimes when you're young, you have to take chances. I mean, if opportunities present themselves, go for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that sounded like a great opportunity, sure. And you guys had developed a bond at that point, right? So it's,
Oh, right. And I guess this was in 1978, and I guess I'm still here, so it worked out. I mean, I wish it worked out better, naturally, because of everything that happened. But we have our son, and this is this is my country now. I mean, I've been here longer than I've been anywhere else from 78.
Wow. So his beginnings, do you know how he particularly got into in professional wrestling?
Well, you see, he played in college. I mean, he went to college, ended up in West Texas State, which produced Terry Funk, Stan Hansen.
Yeah.
They all were at West Texas State on football scholarships. So they were all there. Then, of course, he got picked up by the Washington Redskins. He didn't make the team, but he got picked up. So he played a little bit for them and then got cut, of course, because as he said, he was young. He didn't realize it was like, didn't kind of do the right thing by, he was young at the time and he realized that. And then he played a lot of semi-pro teams. Mm-hmm. I think he went to Canada. I think he played a Canadian league. He played he went to Mexico, I think, if I remember. So he played around doing semi-pro football. And he ended up in San Antonio with the San Antonio Toros, which was another semi-pro football team. Well, at that stage, he met, I think it was Ivan Putski, and went
Polish
to the
power.
gym. Yeah, so that was how it kind of ended up. So he met him and ended up at the gym, because, of course, he was, working out at that, and kind of went into the wrestling, had the opportunity to see if he wanted to wrestle. So that's kind of how he went into, because if you notice, a lot of the football players end up wrestling. You've got to be an athlete.
I'm sorry, was that when Ivan Putski was in that would have been a Vince Senior territory?
Yeah, because he wasn't.
Northeast?
Yeah, there was Dallas, of course. Fritz was one of the main parts that got him started. Bill Watts, and then of course you have to remember St. Louis, where people knew him as King Kong Brody because there was Dick the Bruiser. So they couldn't have two Bruisers. So in St. Louis, people knew him as King Kong Brody because the two Bruisers was too hard to deal with, Dick the Bruiser and then Bruiser Brody.
Especially at that time, Bruiser, had yet to. Dick the Bruiser had yet to kind of fade out of his career. Yeah, and I remember seeing first your husband. Like I said, I'm 42. I had when I was raised in a certain regional area where the cable, I didn't get world class till later. I saw him on Georgia Championship Wrestling in like very early 80s. And like I told you, he was just scary. He was just one of them. I don't know. He was quite scary. He was quite scary. But I mean, it's so weird because, like I said, I've talked to other professional wrestlers. As a kid, you watch it in a certain perspective, and obviously it was at that time very real, and the whole point of it was to make it real. But it was interesting as you get older to kind of see understand a little bit more behind the scenes. And I love a good shoot interview, and obviously there's a lot of BS in a lot of them, but there's been a pretty consistent theme on your husband that he was just a really, a cool cat, like a really cool guy. And I remember watching the World Class DVD, the Heroes of World Class, and Mark Lawrence was speaking on how bright he was. And I hear that often, how he read often. He was a bright guy. He was into stuff. Like, tell, if you don't mind, just a little bit of the stuff that we don't necessarily see behind the Bruiser, if you will, because he was like a bright intellectual guy.
Right. And a lot of people now, because of Facebook and things like that, contact me, and they were children, because you have to remember he's been gone now for 27 years, and these were young children that remembered him as going through the airport or on a plane, and because he was so memorable, he just stood out in those days, and they said they can remember kind of hiding behind their father's, legs, because they were here's this monster that, as a little kid, you imagine looking up and seeing this. And they can remember him going over there and kind of getting down, squatting down and talking to them, saying, just introducing themselves. And they said it kind of, all their lives, they realized that you can't judge a book by its cover.
Right.
And then on the planes, a lot of people, some of the other people that have contacted me have actually sat next to him, And it's like, here he is, looking the way he does, reading the Wall Street Journal.
Right. Perception isn't always reality.
And what he did, you see, what happened, why I think he is remembered, he treated this like a business, like anybody out there that's going to work every day that treats it as a business. He never lost sight of who he was. Sometimes people in the public eye become the character they create.
Yes.
And that's when a lot of trouble starts, because they lose sight of who the real person is. Well, he never lost sight that he was Frank Goodish, and then as a business, he was Bruiser Brody. So he always went out there. I mean, he would get tapes. He would watch his matches. He would see what he could do better. And like you do if you want to get on with the business, because his main thought was he wanted to go out there and give his fans the best possible match that he could, so that they would leave that building at night and say, dang, is it real? Because he made it real.
Yeah.
And he looked, and I mean, he made it as real as it could be, that people didn't feel that they were cheated.
No.
He wanted them to feel that they had a great night and it was worth everything, you know, that they paid to go see that ticket. Because he put his fans, it wasn't the promoters, it wasn't anything. He put his fans first, and he wanted to satisfy them. And I think that's why even today, after so long, that people remember. They remember the matches. And, of course, you have to remember St. Louis was one of his favorite places to be. In the old days of the Kyle Auditorium.
And the
Keel,
wrestling,
that's my,
wrestling at the Chase or the Keel. I'm not sure if he was ever
wrestling. Yep, wrestling at the Chase, Sam Muchnick, Larry Matisak.
He's still booking SICW wrestling with Herb Simmons. Shout out to Herb Simmons.
Oh, I know. Herb has invited me down several times, and it's so amazing. He brings me down, and I go to the matches, and I think I was there. He brought me down in May, and I will go there or I'll do something, and the people still chant Brody, Brody, Brody. It's really quite amazing. And they come up and they talk to me and they tell me stories. And, you know, he would be absolutely amazed at the legacy that he has left behind.
Yeah, and then he really embodied, like you said, he's really about the business, but he really embodied the psychological aspect of it, which I think is really kind of missing in today's wrestling. And he was definitely one of a kind. If you don't mind, what was his thoughts on? Because as you hear about a lot of wrestlers from the '80s, the road schedule, what were his thoughts on? A, it seemed like to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, A, about the road schedule, and B, it seemed like he really like you said, he was so about the business, he really made it to a point to really kind of pick and choose his things very strategically. He was on the road, don't get me wrong, but I'm sorry, the road schedule. What were his thoughts on the road schedule?
Too much. Especially as his son got older, he was trying to pull back a little bit, because Japan, you know, I would say that I would be lucky to see him all together on all the days, probably less than 3 months a year. I mean, that's how much he was gone from the house, that I was by myself. And as his son was getting older, he knew that he wanted to spend more time with his son. So
that seems to be such a consistent theme, you know. Obviously, if you see these guys, they're on the road all the time. They have to have obviously families and being away from them. That's a very consistent theme, and honestly, it's a testament to you guys that you guys were able to stay together through that, because, like I said, people in the public eye, it's difficult to keep relationships together, and you know. Yeah.
I know. No, that's exactly, because, I mean, it was hard because I had to do everything myself, and especially after, you know, Jeff was born, and that it was hard not having anybody around, you know, in times that you really need help. But I had good neighbors, and you just do it. I mean, you know, in life is not easy. And you don't ever think it's going to be easy, but when it's worth it, you work together. That's a successful relationship. You work together through the hard times, the good times and the hard times, because everybody goes through good and hard times.
Absolutely.
And
it's
it was,
kind of how
even
you
though,
bounce back kind of thing is always the testament, It's not how many times you get knocked down. It's
you gotta stand up, and with everything that I've been through, you have to keep going. You can't, a lot of people I know live in the past, but you can't do that because there's a whole life ahead of you. It's going to be a different life. It's not going to be the life you had,
yes.
but it's still, and the people that are gone would want you to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm so glad. I'm glad to, obviously I don't know you, so I'm glad to hear you articulate that. That's a great attitude to have because, there's people who oftentimes spend way too much time in that rear view mirror when the front windshield air is huge and just waiting for you to look out
right.
over there. If you don't mind, shoot us. I don't want to keep you too long, obviously, but I'd love to talk to you some more. But if you don't mind, tell me some good. Like I said, I hadn't gotten into the world class wrestling until a little bit later, and it had been around for a very long time. And there was a particular documentary that I'd seen recently called Heroes of World Class, which I thought was really good. Very well done by a gentleman by the name of Brian Harrison. It was right before WWE bought the WCCW library. Yeah. What if you had some good stories? Maybe he lamented about that particular territory, the Von Erichs. That was such a hot territory. Fritz, it was just on fire in Dallas, and the Von Erichs were basically gods. Do you have any particular stories from that particular era? That time?
Well, I know you have to remember, Frank did some booking for
yes.
Fritz, too, and the Von Erichs and everything, and that was kind of like a family to him, because Fritz was the one that got him into the business, so there was always a special connection with the Von Erichs, and even today, once in a while, I contact, Kevin. Kevin and I, we contact each other, and it's really nice that, And
he was just on Ric Flair's new podcast, and I actually just listened to him today. I hadn't heard from him in a while. He sounds like he's living pretty good, living a very chill life in Hawaii.
Oh, I know.
All his family.
And with his mom and everything, Doris. But there's a family that's had a lot of tragedy too.
Oh my goodness.
But no, it's like Frank worked really hard with the Von Erichs. And, some of the little shows, see, he did that because that gave them sometimes a little bit longer at home. And, in fact, with that territory, see, I hardly ever saw Frank wrestle because that was not part of it. But once in a while, if he was wrestling close to home, like when he was working the territory, like he could work, because we were in San Antonio, was our base it was out in the hill country. So if he was going to Austin or Corpus Christi, sometimes he'd take me and Jeff with him, which was, unusual. But it was fun. We didn't really too much go into the wrestling. Like we would drive up with him and then we'd go do something and then, meet him afterwards. But I don't think people realize that with wrestling. Some of the places, some of the small territories that he would go to. I remember one night he had to actually get changed. There wasn't even a dressing room in the building. He had to actually get changed on the street. The back of the building. It's not. People think it's not glamorous. It can be really hard. But I remember Satan. He said, "Yep, this is what I do when I'm on the road. Here I am." At the back of the building, getting changed into my clothes.
The glamorous life of a professional wrestler.
Glamorous life.
Did Frank ever happen to mention like a favorite territory? I know there were so many, and he was a huge draw everywhere. Which one did he happen to mention? Not so much payoff-wise, but just generally speaking, did he happen to have a favorite place he liked to work?
St. Louis.
For Sam.
To Sam, right up the top. That has to be the favorite. And like I said, and that's why I go and see Herb, because Herb and him, they did some little shows together. And Herb has old style wrestling. I've read a lot of good write-ups, and he is such a good guy, Herb Simmons, and with Larry Matisak too. And just he has all the old guys. Bill Abner was there
This
was
weekend,
there
this
on,
past weekend.
Yeah, this weekend was there. This past weekend.
I'm trying to get him on my podcast. That's all right. We'll get
and
him.
the Cowboy Bob.
He's coming.
I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one? Cowboy? Who'd you say?
Bob Wood, the one that's working with Herb down there, that's helping him down there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought you were talking about Cowboy Johnny Mantell. Cowboy Johnny Mantell's going to be on next week or later on this week. Johnny Mantell from WCCW, awesome guy.
Oh, he is. I met. I've been in contact with Johnny, but last year and this year. Last year, Frank was inducted into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame up there in Amsterdam, New York,
Nice.
which Johnny was up there, and which is an incredible organization. They have a museum there, which is like 2-3 stories of nothing but wrestling memorabilia. I mean, it's from the very beginning. So if anybody is ever up Amsterdam, New York, upstate New York, you have to go to the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. It is incredible for anyone that's a wrestling fan.
Wow. That sounds like something I'd like to definitely visit.
And then this year in April, he got an award from the CAC, the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Ah, yeah.
And he got it from Terry Funk and Stan Hansen.
Nice. The Lariat. Oof.
Yeah. So, Stan is one of the people that have really stayed in touch with us from the very beginning. In fact, he used to take Jeff in the school holidays after it happened, because Jeff was just young.
Mm.
He would take them with his children on magical mystery tours, and it was
nice.
really nice. So him and his family have stayed, really good friends with us, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I always enjoyed Stan Hansen's work as well. Another big, huge contribution to the world of professional wrestling, and specifically in the world World Class Championship promotion, was a gentleman by the name of Gary Hart. I think he doesn't quite get his due in the world of best managers. He was a booker. He was one of the first people to bring in like Kabuki and that, so many elements of professional wrestling that he is so integral to, that he doesn't really get credit for. What are your thoughts, and do you have any particular stories on Gary Hart, whose book I'm still trying to get?
Oh, Gary, yes, Gary was another good friend. Had a lot to do with Gary back in those days too. It's terrible that he's passed on too.
Yes.
But yes, him and Frank used to come up with some incredible gimmicks. And one of them, I think it was San Antonio, Texas, they had, and I think it was, they found an old ambulance. I think it was an ambulance. And they would go into the building. Frank would be in the back with a 2x4, and Gary would be there too. And they promised that whoever he was wrestling would leave in the ambulance, which was a really kind of a neat gimmick. People loved it.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Hart. Again, watching that Heroes of World Class, it was one of those that he really showed a lot of. He gave a little great insight into the business. If you don't mind, and I'm just going to let you kind of speak on this, if you don't mind. I don't mean to transition callously, but his contribution obviously was so great, and it would have been obviously even more significant had there was a trip to Puerto Rico. If you don't mind, I'm not going to give you because it just is pointless, because that's why I want you on. What happened in Puerto Rico?
I know. I kind of blanked out that whole time, but nobody will ever really know what happened. I mean, that's just something that I had to let go, because you want answers, but I don't think nobody knows exactly what happened. And but the one thing is, when this happened, the people of Puerto Rico, there was a banner. I won't get into details. The banner, and the banner said, "Please do not blame the people of Puerto Rico for the actions of one man." So they were really good. The people were really good to me, and no, it's
And when you say
it was,
one man, where Frank.
well, we know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happened, it was one person that did it, and that's about all. You know what I mean?
Sure,
That's
sure. No,
about
absolutely.
all I can say. Because I kind of had to let it go. But I do believe in karma. I do believe that what comes around goes around.
I agree. I
What
definitely
goes around
agree,
comes
Barbara.
around.
Absolutely. And I'm on the fringes, and it's, obviously you have to let these things go, but there's an anger element, not just like, man, you like lost this person that you love, but if just for people who don't know, for the listening audience, this gentleman who took Frank's life wound up kind of essentially walking, due to certain politics of the region, etc. It just, and that adds another element of just like, not only is your loved one gone, but and there's like no accountability, so it just like doubles your effort to kind of have to get past that, not just the loss, but the injustice, if you will.
I know, but you look around every day and you see it. You see people,
you're right.
see people going through the same injustice. It's just,
see, I'm glad you. Good. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm glad you have that perspective. That's beautiful, because I don't know. I don't know you, and I'm glad to hear you after this time be able to be in the peace that you are, and I'm happy to hear that, quite frankly, Barbara.
Yeah, and one thing that you didn't ask this question, but sometimes people ask me the question: what do you think Frank would have been, today if everything hadn't have happened? Well, back just before it happened, he was even thinking ahead of what to do. He had bought a piece of land with a little river running through it, and he was going to build a boys' camp to take boys, disadvantaged boys, to give them a place in summer to kind of, just what I mean, the disadvantaged boys that don't get much of a chance. He was already thinking ahead, and he had bought this wrestling ring, and he was working with a professor from the university down there, and they were going to come up with a skit to go into the schools, put up the wrestling ring in the schools, do a little skit, and talk about the dangers of, drugs, alcohol, and that. Because, to put an authority figure in, the kids, we know kids, I know my son, you don't listen to authority, but Frank thought that maybe put him in the ring the way he looked, that he could actually get across to people and actually, give a message out between everything with the bullying and everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just judging by these children that are now full-grown families, that they remembered him, I think it's such a shame it never happened, but I think he could have really made a difference. But that's what he was kind of wanting to do, because everybody knows you can't do wrestling when you're 60. I mean, I know some of them try, but you gotta,
you gotta tell that to some of these folks out here, Barbara.
I know, because it's such a hard business, and the body is broken down because you're taking bumps all the time.
Well, and not to mention any names or put anybody on blast, but there are a few out here. Unfortunately, too many legends have passed, and most recently Roddy and Dusty. But there's too many, as you have said, who are still living the gimmick and not letting go. And no names will be mentioned. No,
and that was one thing. I mean, he knew. You know what I mean? He knew. He was in his 40s when everything happened, and he knew, because of the way his body was breaking down too, just because of all and from football too, from
Absolutely.
the football injuries, and then to get into wrestling and that, and it was just one of those things. So it's just a shame. I mean, life is full of changes. That's one thing you can count on in life, is there's going to be changes. Is how you deal with those changes.
Absolutely.
Is how it is. I'm not going to say it doesn't make it any easier, but it's just something that you have to do.
Well, let me ask you, and I obviously don't mean to sound macabre at all. Kevin Von Erich in that documentary, again, I hate to keep bringing it up, but it was a really powerful documentary. Obviously, his loss is pretty significant, as you know.
Oh, God.
Um,
Oh, God.
and he was talking about around 9/11 time, people were asking him about how to deal with grief, as if he was an expert, because he obviously has dealt with it. But his perspective was, and I found it very forthright and frank. He was like, it doesn't get easier. It's like he's like, for him, it was like David Von Erich just died yesterday, and I found that quite poignant, and I felt bad for him that he hadn't moved past in any way where it wasn't just yesterday. You know what I mean? Obviously, what are your thoughts on that? Did Frank just die yesterday?
I remember, see, what it was, I was in that because Frank was, as I said, was working, booking, and there was 3 of them went at that time. I mean, starting with David and then the younger 2. So yeah. I was there the whole time that, we were dealing with that at that time. And I think about their mom, Doris. I mean, how do you go through that with so many children going the way they did?
Even Jackie, the child, who was electrocuted when he was a child.
Right, because there was that, because there was like 6 boys all together to have, I think, 6 boys, I think it was, and only having 1 left. I mean, I do think about it. I think what I think, because of all this, they don't really go because they're in your heart and they're remembered. So it's like, in a way, I sort of think, because sometimes it's hard for me to even rationalize that it has been 27 years, because, I mean, he has his own Facebook page. People have
he's everywhere.
His Facebook page that the Japanese people, I have them contact me all the time to be my friend and everything from the time, because Japan was another one that he really liked to go, St. Louis, Japan, because they remembered him over there. In fact, after he departed, they took me over there. They had a memorial show, and they took me and Jeff over there, and I was so honored to be able to see exactly what it was like for him, because he always used to come home and say, "You won't believe what it's like over there." It's just, so different. So I was so thrilled that I did get the chance, even though it wasn't for a good. It wasn't good
because
it wasn't for the circumstances weren't good. But I appreciate that I got to experience being over there and seeing exactly what they thought of him. So, yeah, he's very, very much, I think, people like that kind of, so he's so remembered, his spirit is still very alive.
It's it's interesting because
if that makes sense.
No, it does, and it's interesting because I was there when it was organic and just happening, and then it kind of faded for a quick moment. But he has become iconic. So many of these figures that we just used to watch, that were just part of our entertainment. Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Bruiser, Brody. I mean, they've become iconic, and it transcends time. Like you said, he's not gone anywhere.
And that's why, when Larry Matisak approached me to write the book, Brody, The Triumph and Tragedy of Wrestling's Rebel, I wasn't even thinking of it. But then, when this computer started, I had gone to visit my son, and he had a computer, and he said, "Put in Dad's name." I put in, Bruiser Brody. I mean, I was absolutely shocked of all the stuff that came up about him, and there was so much untruth. I was reading some of these things, and I thought, oh my gosh! I mean, because once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't take it back.
The
once
old
it's on the
interweb.
internet. Oh yes, it's there. And when Larry approached me, because Larry was the one, I mean, he trusted. Gary Hart was another one, but Larry was one that he trusted. And of course, Stan, there was quite a few, but So when he approached me, because he had already written the book Wrestling at the Chase, and they wanted him to write a book on Frank's, and I said, well, I'm not an author or anything. He said, all you have to do is write down the personal stuff, who he was, like you asked me, how you met, and just different things like that. You tell it from the personal side. I will do the wrestling side. And we did, and people have been very complimentary because it is. I realized this would be the only way to get the truth out there. That no matter what happens, that this book will stay on, and it's the truth.
Yeah.
The truth about his wrestling, and even the truth about everything.
Yeah.
Because Larry is such a truthful person that he told. I mean, and it's not all good. You know, Frank was kind of a rebel. That's why it's called Of Wrestling's Rebel. He
Right.
was a rebel in the business, and everybody knew about it. But as I said, he looked after the fans more than anything.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you kind of, you have a few problems with some of the promoters out there.
Yeah, but even they know what what wrestlers now know. Without the fans, they wouldn't be there. Without us appreciating Brody, there would be no Brody. But he did what he did, and we definitely appreciated it.
I know, because he wanted, they realized after a while that, okay, just let him be. He made money for them.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
he drew houses.
If you don't mind me asking, and it sounds weird, but I'm a collector of sorts, and are his boots? What happened to those iconic boots of his? Were there more than one pair? Because I'm sure if there weren't, they had to smell quite a foul.
Oh no, I have his boots and his fur jacket, or his sheepskin jacket, or whatever, the one he used to wear down in Japan a lot of times. Yeah, I have his boots and tights and socks and what. I have all his stuff that he used to wear. I haven't done anything with it yet. I've just been holding on to it. So yeah, I do have all that.
Yeah, again, that's just one of those things, part of his accoutrement, if you will. There's the armband, on the shoulder. There's, the gear, his black tights, and the boot. That was always. Oh, and the socks, the white socks with the black stripes.
I've got the socks, I've got the tights, I've got the...
Tell me there were more than one pair of the black socks, because those two had to have been standing up when he woke up in the morning, waiting for him to jump in.
Oh, God, yeah, there's several. They were well worn, because he used, like a lot of people, you wear the same socks.
Yeah.
It's like, good luck. And with his boots, I think he wore two pairs of socks anyway. They have the ones with the stripes around the top. Those old stripes, the socks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a 70s kid. I was born in 73. I know what's up.
Oh, yes, I know. I have. I don't know what. As I said, I've still got on. I said, Jeff, if he wants them, or if he wants to sell them or something, because I know sometimes if it's up to Jeff, because sometimes it's good to, as you're getting older in that, it's good to share things.
Sure. Yeah, and that'd be a tough decision, because obviously there's probably going to be some museum of some form which would, be more than happy to accommodate Bruiser Brody's boots.
Oh, yeah, I've thought about that. Like I said, I sent some things up to the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, because they have a lot of the Von Erichs things, and they've got a lot of the iconic outfits that people wore in the ring. So, like I said, when I say it's a museum, it's a museum. So
Nice.
That's kind of what's in the back of my mind that I might do, is just at that time when his son tells me, what do you want to do, that, I might put him in the museum, because then everybody can enjoy. See, there's so many people that still remember.
Yeah, more. I mean, obviously, but yeah, a lot. It's one of those rare things, because he's transcended space, time, like that iconic character will exist forever. It's anyway. You're gonna get me on.
I know, because that was so bad. I mean, even this year, losing Roddy and Dusty.
Oh, don't get me started.
And the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, dang. I mean, it's just wow.
Yeah, that was, and it's weird, and it's not so weird. I mean, we're gonna close this out, but like I said, being literally, my programming was, 505, the Superstation, certain wrestling. I was raised on these guys, and of course, the inevitability of life. Of course, we all pass on. I get it. But there's those individuals who were such a huge fixture, if you will, to go down like so fast, back to back. That was literally within weeks that Dusty and Roddy went down, and that was heavy. That was really heavy.
I know. And it just shows you that, when you've been in the business a long time, it's a hard business. That's about all you can come down. It's a really hard business.
Yeah.
You give so much of yourself.
And that is definitely something that the fans so much more appreciate now. You know, unfortunately, it had to come at that kind of cost for people to really understand. You know, to go from the conversation of it's fake to like, all right, this, you know, we can get into the conversation of predetermined or whatever, but there is an effect on these guys' bodies that do this, especially even back in the territory days. That's what's even just more insane.
Right. No, you had to be an athlete and you had to be in shape because nobody can do that to their bodies on a constant level.
Yeah, and we definitely see the toll that it takes. Barbara, I can't even begin to thank you for your time this evening. I am, however, going to have to ask you to participate in a final segment that we have for everyone participate in the program. It is called the Conspiracy Triangle of Doom. It is very simply 3 questions that I ask you that you can say yes or no to. You can expound if you so choose, but a yes or no will suffice. Question number 1. Are you prepared?
Yes.
Here we go. Question number 1. Are you or do you believe in the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence?
Anything's possible.
A very pragmatic mind there. I like that. Very like that. Question number 2. Do you believe or do you follow the narrative, if you will, of the official version of the events of November 22nd, 1963? Lee Harvey Oswald firing 3 shots from the old Mannlicher Carcano rifle, killing our 35th president.
I have no idea.
Hey, I'm with that. I'm with that. I don't either.
That was before that I was over here, and we did not get that much information.
Okay. A little bit more contemporary then. Question number 3. Do you believe, and do you believe the official story of the events of September the 11th, 2001? Of course, there's the terrorist attacks of the 19 hijackers, or there's the inside job-ish story. Do you believe there's anything? Yeah.
That's a hard one. That's
on the fence a little bit.
Yeah, that's it's. We're only told what they want us to believe. And like I said, it's we don't know a lot, right?
What the American people doesn't know is what makes them the American people. I heard that in a movie one time.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
No, as I said, it was something that you'll never forget.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. It was a tragic day. Very sad day. So you are on the fence again. You're not so... It's hard to tell. It's hard. I got you. I feel what you're laying down. I got you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not going to keep you any longer. Any social media, any websites, anything you would like to promote so people can maybe follow you or follow up on some of Frank's stuff?
Well, they have the closed group called Bruiser, Brody, Hardcore, before Hardcore, which if anybody is a fan, it has a lot of photographs of him and information and different things. So that is something that if people are interested, it's quite a nice little closed group just on him.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to get off without asking you, what are you up to now? I hate to just have it be all completely about Frank. What are you up to these days?
Well, these days it's kind of Tai Chi, yoga.
Nice.
Just walking, just kind of trying to stay in shape.
Be present.
Be present. Exactly. Be present of the moment. I always like this little one that they say that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery,
Absolutely.
and today is the present.
Those are absolutely perfect words to end on. Mrs. Barbara Goodish, I thank you so very much for your time. I thank you so much. And we'll obviously stay in touch on the old face space and social networking and maybe get you on sometime again, see what you're up to. Or maybe we'll catch up if I see you at the old SICW gatherings.
And thank you, and please tell Johnny Mantel when you talk to him hi from me.
I will do that very thing. Thank you so very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
That was Barbara Goodish, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. We will have more.